My name is Layla Corey. I'm the Creative Engagement Coordinator at Spaces. To ID my appearance, I'm a 27-year-old Arab American person. I have long, wavy brown hair and glasses. I ID my appearance in consideration to blind or visually impaired folks who are dropping in for the call, and you're all welcome to do the same when we open the floor. And I'm excited to welcome our current artist in residence, Mildred Beltré, who arrived from Brooklyn yesterday to Cleveland and will be on residency in Spaces until April 18th. Her exhibit, Reciprocity, Back, Forth and Forth, will be on view at Spaces Front Gallery from April 16th to June 4th. So mark your calendars. And there's information about that exhibit in the chat. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Mildred. So Mildred, if you want to introduce yourself, tell us what you've been up to since you arrived and what your plan is looking for your residency.
Hello, everyone. Excuse me. Hello, everyone. My name is Mildred Beltré, and I'll describe myself. I'm wearing a green shirt and a black sweater. I've got my hair in braids. I am a mature woman wearing lipstick, hoop earrings that don't quite match, and my hair, which is black, is in braids. I myself am also black, of sort of medium brown complexion. I arrived in Cleveland yesterday afternoon, and so I actually haven't seen very much. The area that I'm in, where Spaces is quite lovely. I'm getting used to, it's a very different landscape from Brooklyn, New York, where I typically live. And so I am just happy to be here in this nice sunny weather. I'm sort of getting oriented both with the space of Cleveland and with the space of Spaces, laying out my work and figuring out how to arrange it in the space. I have a few pieces that I'm going to finish while I'm here. So I don't know if people can drop by, but if people want to drop by as I'm working, I'm happy to say hello. I'll also be working at Zygote Print Shop a few days where I'll be producing an edition of prints that'll be a giveaway. So if you come to the gallery at any point during the exhibit, hopefully you can have a little print to take home with you.
So we're joined with Jackie Feldman from Zygote Press, and we're excited to be kind of in partnership in this project. So Mildred, could you tell us a little bit more about your printmaking practice, or how printmaking
Sure.
relates, I guess how the process relates to your practice?
So I'm trained as a printmaker, but I would say now my practice is it's sort of expanded beyond printmaking, but I think printmaking sort of forms a lot of how I think. So I, like all printmakers, I'm obsessed with the multiple. And even when I'm not making prints, the idea of repetition appears in the work a lot. My work is also often very labor intensive. In this exhibition that I'm mounting now, I've included a weaving that I worked on over a period of months, as well as a cross stitch piece that I actually worked on for over a year. And so I guess printmaking ties into my work in terms of labor in some ways. And then there's also something, I think there's always there's a generosity in printmaking that I think I always try to exploit. So that idea of being able to produce something that can exist in multiple places at the same time is really interesting to me. And that is sort of, unique to printed matter, that it can be distributed, in a way that a lot of, that a precious art object can't be. So I think that's, some of the ways that um, printmaking affects the way I think about making work. And it also, printmaking has traditionally been used as a form of communication, so it's been used to like proliferate political ideas or information, of any kind. And so I think it's also informed a lot of the way I think of what art should do in some ways. And I think about art as something that can be used as a tool for sparking dialogue, whether or not the artist is present, right? I think it can be used as a tool for sparking dialogue.
But I will say, so Mildred, kind of expanding upon what you said about information sharing, you also do this through your social practice. You have a project called the Brooklyn High Art Machine, which
Mm-hmm.
is really excellent. I'm going to drop the link to the website for that in the chat, so folks can read about it. But would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Sure. So as part of what I think of an expanded printmaking practice, I started a project with a neighbor of mine called the Brooklyn High Art Machine. And so my neighbor and fellow artist, Oasis Duvernay, we've lived in the same neighborhood or in the same building for over 20 years. And part of our getting to know each other had to do with sort of discovering that we were both artists, that we were both mothers, we were both Caribbean American, we were both sort of teaching artists, and we began sort of inviting each other to each other's apartments to draw together, and just in the process of doing that, we would talk about things and, maybe talk about our lives, talk about our work, talk about multiple things. And we thought at some point, we were like, well, what would happen if we took this outside? Instead of working together in each other's apartments, we just took a table outside, some art supplies, and invited anybody walking by to come work with us. And so we did that. So one summer, we sort of bought a couple of folding tables. We borrowed a tent from someone, from our super actually, and brought out a lot of art supplies that we'd sort of accumulated through our work as being teaching artists, and just set up various art projects on the street right across from where we live. And so that was 10 years ago. And so the project has, evolved through the years. So it started really basic, much like it would be, in a classroom where we sort of like, we made kites, we made piñatas. And then we also set up like printmaking. So we brought out sort of like a board and a screen and a bucket of water and some Tyvek. And we started, inviting people to make silkscreen with us. And then if you look at the images, there's a fence right by where we work. So that fence would sort of become this like makeshift gallery drying rack for the work. And it was, and people of all ages would sort of join us. And at first they were like, they'd be like, who are you? Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And I think people expected us to be part of some nonprofit, right? Like they were expecting us to name some organization, and we would just be like, oh no, we're your neighbor. And we would sort of point to where we live. And then people would kind of sit down and talk to us. And, and so over the years, the project and the relationships with people on my block, have really changed. And then a couple of years into the project, we decided to start weaving into a chain link fence that sort of divides our block. It's sort of a long block with a subway underpass, and then there's like a chain link fence that spans both sides of the street. And we started weaving messages into that fence. And again, people were like, who are you? Why are you doing this? And, so it was an opportunity to talk to people as we were working. And again, to develop relationships. And it's interesting to see how it's developed over the years, where I think people have really looked forward to it. And, it's sort of, it's nice. We take it down every year and we do a new one, when the weather gets warmer. And it's interesting. Some people didn't know that it was us for years. They just thought it was like some sponsored thing. So when they see us, they're like, oh, that's you, and they'll stop and talk and tell us what it's meant to them to sort of walk by it every year. And there's also another interesting reaction sometimes, which is, so one thing that I didn't mention is that my neighborhood, the part of the neighborhood where I live, was predominantly Caribbean, West Indian when I moved there, and now it's much more gentrified. And part of the project has been a little bit about just claiming space on the street for Black and Brown people, because I'm sure, as you all know, in Cleveland, I would imagine that something that comes along with gentrification is a lot of extra policing of Black and Brown bodies in order to make it safe for more affluent, often white bodies. And so part of the project has been about claiming space on the sidewalk for creative, generative activity for anyone. But typically our participants are, our immediate neighbors, which are more African American and Caribbean. And but often when we're working on the fence, newer residents, this has happened to me several times. Like, I'll be working on the fence and someone will come up to me and they'll say, "Oh, who does this?" And I kind of turn around like, I do it. They're like, no, but who does this? And I was like, I do it. like, I do the labor. It was my idea. I fund it. I do it. And it's interesting. So that question kind of, betrays a framework, right? So both the framework of like, this must be institutional, but also like it maybe isn't fathomable that like it could be something generated from the community. So I think that's also another important thing, this the idea of doing a project where you live carries a different kind of accountability, in that if people like it, that's good, but if they don't like it, then you have to live with whatever comes from that, as well. It's not like if you're from an organization, you can go to a community, you can do a project, even if you're there for a certain amount of time, but then you extract yourself and go back to where you are. So that's been, it's been I feel like there's a lot of accountability that I have to the people that I live with that I wouldn't have to necessarily have if I was working in another way. Hi, Leah.
Hi, my name is Jackie Feldman. I'm here on behalf of Zygo Press. Hi, Mildred. It is such a pleasure
Hi.
to meet you. I've heard so many amazing things about you, and I can't tell you how thrilled we are that you'll be joining us at Zygo for a bit during your stay here in Cleveland.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I love what you just shared with us about your project in Brooklyn. I actually lived in Brooklyn for a few years right after 9/11, and I can picture what you're talking about, the overpass and the chain link fence. And so I can, yeah, it sounds amazing, and it sounds perfect for Brooklyn. But um, I hope that as you get to know Cleveland a little bit, you'll see some of that kind of neighborhood vibe that is so prevalent in Brooklyn. That's the thing that I loved most about living there is very clear sense of neighborhoods and ethnicities and cultures and um, Cleveland is often feels very suburban, depending on where you are. But the neighborhood around Spaces, and I think around Zygote, very much I think has that Brooklyn vibe. And what you were
Hmm.
describing just stirred up a whole bunch of ideas in my head about things we should be doing and could be doing. Um, but a question that I have for you, I am not a printmaker and I'm new to the printmaking community. I've only been with Zygote for about 6 weeks. So
Oh,
the
wow.
brand new for me. My background is in literary arts. And I'm very curious if you have any thoughts about how to perhaps introduce printmaking across disciplines. I'm very much interested in creating interdisciplinary collaborations between printmaking and other arts organizations. And I would love to hear if you have thoughts about that or have had any experiences with that.
Um, am I muted? No. Well, I mean, I guess one thing that comes to mind, um, is so a lot of the work that we do with people on the street is sort of making text-based prints. And I feel like that's sort of a really easy entry, right? Because into lots of areas, because there's not the pressure of, I think a lot of people probably feel more um, at ease with making a text-based print than they might an image-based print. So that's something that I think of. And then something that we developed for working on the street is really doing stencil-based silk screens, so really just like, I mean, you can buy Tyvek, but we really just went to the post office and got like a bunch of Tyvek mailer envelopes, which are free. And we cut letters out of it, or people can make their own design. And then you can lay that on a silk screen and just pass it through and, produce multiples. And so something that we did to try to make it really accessible was just to make it really easy. And to kind of approach it from things that, maybe felt more familiar to people, like text. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's just something that we found easy. And I also think I feel like printmaking is so good for bringing people together because there's like a certain magic to it. Like when you're making a painting or a drawing, you sort of see it happening. But with a print, like you do these things and then you do this other thing and then you have like the big like magic moment of seeing what it is. So I think that's always really exciting. Again, and I think unique, in a way that other art mediums don't quite get at, you never quite know what's going to happen with a print, whereas, so I think that's a really big hook for people, that's like a really good way to draw them in.
Thank you. You're the second
Yeah.
person in 2 days who has used the word magic in relation to printmaking, and I'm beginning to put it together that maybe there's some magic in printmaking. Thank you so much.
Mildred, I'm really interested in how, sorry to go back again to your Brooklyn High Art project. um, I'm really interested in how public art kind of is responsive to the built environment. I'm not very familiar with Crown Heights. I'm not very familiar with Brooklyn, New York at all, one bit. But so when you are weaving along the fence, you said this fence was, it was built along where the subway is.
Yeah, it sort of bisects the block, and there's a subway that runs underneath it. So it's like a bridge, sort of. So like there's the fence, here's the street, here's the fence on both sides, and then there's a subway that passes underneath. So it's a fence, and then you can see like trees, like it's open. So there's no building behind it. It's just open space that has a chain link fence. half like of a chain link fence. So the bottom is concrete and then the top is chain link fence. And it was really, you know, it's an interesting place to activate, because the other thing about the way that that bridge functions on my street is to, um, it divides Black communities on the block. So everybody, you know, it's a Black community, but there's the African American on one side, predominantly African American on one side, and predominantly West Indian on the other. I live on the Caribbean side, and there's traditionally been not serious tension, but like there's like people are aware of difference, and it's not like an easy relationship. So I think it was also been interesting to use that space as kind of like a communal meeting place, for the block, and to, you know, and it's, you know, we do art projects, but we've also done things like, you know, we had a tenants rights meeting where we invited, a housing lawyer to come on the block and speak to people. So people, we like advertised it again just on our block, but people came from like a little bit of a distance, because the housing situation is so dire in New York in general, but in Crown Heights in particular, due to gentrification. A lot of people showed up, you know, and with questions, and then we're able to talk to the lawyer. And then in talking to the lawyer, we're able to connect with each other around different issues that people were having. And so we try to be responsive to what is happening and what people might need. And, you know, and then with the weavings, we also try to offer something that people can think about for a year. So like, you know, we always want to have something that's evocative and open, and hopefully like a place where people can stop and talk to each other, you know, either about what they're reading or what they're seeing. There's a lot of picture taking that happens in front of it. I sit on my stoop sometimes and just watch, how people can, you know, interact with it. Um, but yeah, like the process for coming up what we want to weave into the fence is sort of, you know, one of a lot of conversation and a lot of like rejecting ideas until we finally both kind of like agree on something. And then occasionally we get invited to do weaving other places. So right now we also have a weaving up in Prospect Park. And there's a band shell where typically there's music, live music all summer, but because of the pandemic, the concerts were canceled, and so the parks department and an organization called Brick, um, asked us if we wanted to create something for the band shell, and so we created, a weaving that sort of fits inside the space of the band shell. And for that, we, we find the text in lots of different ways, but for this, we decided to use a quote by the poet Lucille Clifton from a poem of hers called "Come Celebrate with Me." And we chose the line, so what the weaving that's in the park reads: "Come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed." And we thought it was, I guess, evocative of two things. One, you know, the something that came into a very mainstream awareness over the summer around, you know, the killing of Black folks by police. And then also, and Lucille Clifton in her poem was very much talking about the struggles of Black women. And then also, you know, something that resonated with the situation of COVID and, you know, just generally all the grief that everyone was living through and all the deaths that we were all living through, and sort of giving people a space, I guess, within a place of leisure, you know, to consider those words, right? So I think that was also interesting. Like, what does it mean to put that kind of sentiment in a place where people go to relax, right? To have a nice time or to play or whatever. But how do you hold those things that you actually are able to do those things, right?
And that is such a poignant, that's such a poignant poem to choose for that public space, and something that's, I mean, consistent across most cities, and Cleveland's no exception, is that public space and green space, as well as transportation, so in this case the train that you're describing, are in part designed to keep segregation in place. And so that reclamation um, of that fence as your kind of loom, taking a barrier in a leisurely place, using it as a loom, um, to kind of reclaim ownership, and putting this literary reference on there is just really powerful, and I appreciate that a lot. And it looks like Leonie has a question for you.
Hi, Mildred.
Hey.
In the in the UK, the pandemic's really exposed inequalities in housing and education, and I was wondering, on a personal level, how has it impacted your creativity, and are you going to respond within your practice, particularly in this exhibition?
I mean, I think I think the show that I'm about to put up has everything to do with the pandemic, in that it was made during the pandemic and within the conditions of the pandemic. And when I say, and I guess I'm talking more about like the emotional condition of the pandemic. So I do think that the work here is, that will be here, I guess, is, I think, has a lot of the, I guess, like the introspection and maybe the sadness and the anxiety that I was experiencing during the pandemic. Maybe also like a little bit of the tedium, like there was something very tedious about the everyday, while also everything was heightened. So so like I said, I talked a little bit about labor. There's a lot of labor in a lot of the work, and I think it had to do with, so the cross stitch that I referenced earlier, it was something that I had started a while ago and then kind of like lost steam on. But I think there was a way that it became difficult to work in the normal ways that I worked during the pandemic. And so I think picking up that cross stitch felt very natural, in that it was like a quieter way of working, right? So it wasn't about like a grand gesture of working. It was about a way of working where I could be, sitting at the kitchen table with my mom while I'm doing it. I could be, with my kids while I was doing it. So it was and then something that I think bears mentioning is that, my family helped me a lot with some of this work. So there's like a drawing that has all this thread sewn through it, and my mom helped me with that. Like because I also, there was a way in which while I was working, I felt I also had to keep the people around me engaged, because again, I couldn't like retreat as the artist to make my work, but rather had to make the work in the midst of like being in my family in a particular way that's like more intense, right, than normal. So I would be like, here, let's do this. Like, I'll do this and you do that. And the same with my kids. They had a February break, and I hired both my 14-year-olds to be my studio assistants. And I was like, okay, you're going to work on this and you're going to work on that. So, there's, and my mom helped me a lot with the cross stitch. So like, it was both making work, but it was also like finding ways to connect, right? So kind of keeping connection while trying to be traditionally productive, and while also dealing with all the events of the world. So I don't know if that answers your question exactly, but
yeah, thank you. Yeah. It's really nice to hear how you've interwoven everyone and included everyone. Yeah, definitely. I think, particularly as female artists, you can't just take yourself away. You've got to recognise I know for myself, I was just like, if my kids are okay, then that's all that matters actually right now. I just got to get through this. So, but that's how you're able to include them all. Thank you.
And I think I might have seen Leah raise their hand or gesture that they had a question.
Hi. Yeah, I was just gonna note, ironically, well, first, hi, I'm Leah. Mildred's my mentor for school. And funny enough, the mentor I had previously had posted on their Instagram the woven, the that quote that you put up
in the park.
Yeah. And it's so funny because, you know, like it can take on different meanings depending on who you are, but I guess in a sense it can connect to many different people that are going through something that, like, oh wow, I survived another day. And I think that's powerful. I just wanted to add that it's funny because I feel like ironically it just kind of came together that you had been the person that created this, and I had already seen it from my mentor, and it just kind of made this full circle. So I just thought that was interesting.
I think with the weaving, there's part of me in like with all the weavings, not just the one in the park. Like it is important for it to have that ability, right? For like the reader. I mean, and this is true of anything, right? The reader brings their experience to it and how they interpret it. But I think for that one more than others, like I feel like, it's important to bring the identity of the poet into it so that it retains a little bit more of the original context along with the new context, and part of it being that, there's this sense of like, once COVID is over, everything will be fine. And I think it's important to talk about the ways in which certain populations weren't fine before, are worse off now, and will still be worse off after, And so to kind of center that, right? So that within like all of the spiraling storms, there's a piece that like, is that still will always need attention, right? That always needs to be given attention, and not just be like, okay, it's all fine now, and everybody's fine. It's, but so I do like that it can be interpreted multiple ways, but I think I do kind of keep pushing it, towards a more, I guess, racialized reading, and understanding it within COVID, but also within that context.
Up here, there you
I think I'm in. I'm so sorry. I was a little bit late. Hi, everybody. Mildred, welcome to Cleveland. I think I
Thank
saw
you.
your background. It's like you're already in Cleveland, right?
Yes.
It's like
yes, I forgot to mention this beautiful brick wall behind you.
So welcome to our sunny Cleveland. And I'm sorry, I'm a little bit late. Can I ask you one question? When we will see you in Zygat to begin?
Tomorrow, hopefully.
Tomorrow, okay. Okay, so then I will see you tomorrow, meet you tomorrow in a person. And yes, and then you will start the process of your magic. Like printing is a magic process. It's absolutely true. So this was only my question. So tomorrow we'll see you and meet you.
Yeah.
Mildred, you mentioned wanting to visit some thrift stores while you're here. Is there any?
Yes.
I sent you a few of my favorites that I know of on the west side. That would be kind of maybe biking distance from you. But is there anything else you're looking for recommendations for while you're here?
I know I should be asking you about art things, but really my priority was the thrift stores. I guess, let's see. I mean, I guess I'm interested in I guess I am someone mentioned the like different neighborhoods. I am interested in like seeing the changing landscape, right, of a of a city. I often find that like, and I don't know if this is true for Cleveland, but I often find that the best way to understand a place is to ride the bus. I don't know what the buses are like here, but I think that's so. If I was to ride a bus somewhere, which direction do people recommend I head, or what bus should I take?
Wow, in Cleveland, I think you might be better off getting on the Rapid line. That might be
Yeah.
fun. Buses are not like they just don't run the way that they run in Brooklyn or in any of the other more densely populated metropolitan areas. So I
Uh-huh.
think our rapid transit system is more fun than the bus, and you can if you can make it to Tower City, which is like right in the center of downtown, and pick up the rapid line from there. Um, you can go up to the Van Aken district on it, which is east. That would
Uh-huh.
give you some sense of kind of like you can go up to Shaker Square first and then up to the Van Aken district, and those are both fun neighborhoods and will kind of give you a sense of um, the suburbs that are closer to the downtown area, not the far, um, the outer rings of the suburbs that are boring. you know, nothing really fun there, at least I think. Um, but, but on the west side, I think you would really enjoy. I mean, the West Side Market is a must. Um, I just don't know that that would probably be a bus ride from Spaces, right? Um,
I think I walked by it yesterday.
oh,
I think,
it could be. It could be just
but I didn't go in. I didn't go in.
yeah. No, that's fun, and the whole Tremont area is very much a foodie place. Lots of
Okay.
great places to eat and fun, and some like cool little tiny gallery places and secondhand shops and stuff like that I think are
That
fun.
sounds good.
Okay, I'll be
In
quiet now.
terms, oh, I'm so sorry, Jackie. Um, in terms of kind of observing how, neighborhoods and how they've changed over time. So where you are right now, at the corner of 29th and Detroit was historically the kind of like queer, like center of queer life in Cleveland historically. And there's not much of a trace of it left anymore, unfortunately, aside from maybe a commemorative plaque on that corner, which really doesn't do justice to the amount of just community centered spaces that were there that are no longer there, the kind of mutual aid services in the height of HIV in the 90s. That was the original site of the very first LGBT center in Cleveland. So not to shamelessly plug one of my own projects in your talk, but I do have an archiving project that I can send you. I'll put it in the chat, where I've
I would love that.
where I've attempted to kind of begin to unearth that history. So there's something there if anyone else would like to add to it. Well,
Anything else in Cleveland I should check out?
Yes, of course. You have to check out our Cleveland Museum of Art, and it's a University Circle. It's another nice neighborhood with everything. And right now it's a perfect time because it's kind of, we don't have lots of sakura here in Cleveland, but right now we have it exactly in a pond in front of our Museum of Art. It's a perfect, like a scene to see our beauty of Cleveland. And then it's kind of walkable distance to Mocha, our Museum of
Oh,
Contemporary Art. And right now in Cleveland Museum of Art, there's a very nice exhibitions. It's like they do the stories behind the scene. They put some of their, with a curator, you can go and see so many never seen stuff and exhibitions. It's really, really interesting. And it's free,
nice.
like I said, but you have to go and make your reservation for the visit.
Okay.
So, and it's really, you will love this area. It's like a totally walkable from like here and there. And tomorrow,
awesome.
when you will be here in Zygot, we are located in its totally opposite of spaces. We're in east side, and we are located in kind of in the center of Asia Town. And it's interesting. It's like a very historical part of the city as well. And you can see a little bit different from what you are located right now. So we have lots of Asia supermarkets and foodie places, and yeah, you will love it. Honestly, I can walk from Zygot to Spaces. It sounds like a distance, but it's like a 35 minutes to walk if you like to
Oh
walk.
yeah. Yeah.
It's like a just
We
straight.
walk in New York.
Yeah, I remember that. It's like everybody walk in a world, and here it's like oops, it's so long distance. Yeah.
So thank you, Yana. I saw that Andrea.
Yes.
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 Andrea is a really lovely person, poet, all around
Stop.
super being who's in the group with us here.
Stop. Thanks for that introduction. Yeah, my camera's kind of messed up, but I'm still here and I've been listening. So it's great to hear from you, Mildred, and that you're
Hi.
in Cleveland. And like Layla was saying, I'm a poet and writer. So to hear how I forget the name of the poem that you were saying.
The Lucille Clifton.
Yeah, that was very beautiful. And I'm trying to get more into ekphrastic poetry. So take like looking at art pieces and writing something from that. So I definitely am excited to see what your exhibit will look like and go into spaces and take some inspiration and maybe write to that.
Yay.
I'm extremely excited. So very honored to be here. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, well, maybe you can stop by and
Yeah.
we can meet.
Oh, for sure. I love that. Love that.
So we just have a few minutes left. If anybody has anything else they'd like to add, or Mildred, if you have anything else a note you'd like to end on.
No, I've never been to Ohio, so I'm kind of excited to be here in the context of bringing my work here and getting to know the place. I'm very excited to explore the different neighborhoods and see what's going on.
All right, well, I will wrap up here. But as a reminder, because there was a few folks who kind of joined after the introduction, as a reminder, Mildred's exhibit is going to be on view in Spaces Front Gallery from April 16th to June 4th. And we're opening back up to the public with limited capacity, so you can read more about that on our website, which is in the chat, that link to Mildred's exhibition page. So hope to see you all there. And thank you so much for joining during your lunch hour.
Yeah,
And in
thank
the
you,
case
folks.
of the UK, maybe your end of day?
Yeah, it's dinner time here. Now.
All right. Take care, everybody.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.